Okay, clipping masks and compound paths. Here you see this graphic. I have sort of this dinner plate, and what you see when I highlight over this is basically just a path from a brush stroke that I've applied. And to get it to crop within sort of this what looks like a circle, I started with an oval. The oval has, well, now has only visible the drawing that's inside of it. And how I did that was I made a clipping mask. And I did this sort of the shorthand way, which is now available in CS5, which is in your drawing modes over here. If you look at the bottom of your tool menu, you see that you have draw mode normal, behind, or inside. And for this particular object, you can see inside of my layers palette here, if I open up, I have a clipping mask and a path. And notice that when I highlight that whole shape, everything shows up. So it's a clipping mask and a path. So when you make a clipping mask, I'll show you what that is in a second, whether you do it the shorthand way or do it the way it used to have to be done, which I'm going to show you here in a second. Everything's sort of attached together. Everything's movable and editable together, but you have to release them to edit individual components. So using my selection tool and Alt Option, I'm going to click and drag over to the left here, a copy. And you can see that all that drawing that was there, that all follows along with it. So to undo that, you can see when I copied it, once again it's a clipping mask and a path that's reflected over here in the layers palette. If I go up here to the object menu, I have clipping mask and compound path. Well, this is a clipping mask because it says so in the layers palette. I can release that, right? And now I get this option here, and I can always change that thing around and give it a different appearance or a different color. And then same thing with the object that I used to actually crop it. But now that it's not a clipping mask, you can see the rest of the painted area. Whereas before, if I undo here, you see it's going past the boundary here of the circle or the oval, but it's being cropped off. So how this works is if I come over here and I grab an ellipse, I'm going to give it, well, maybe I'll give it a blue stroke, 1-point stroke, just so we could see it. And I'm going to make a circle here. Okay, and it's a see-through circle, there's no fill. And then on top of that, I'm going to make a, whoops, I always do that, make sure that you deselected the object. I'm going to make a rectangle with a yellow fill. And I'll make that right up here. And as you can see, it overlaps the circle. Well, if I take my selection tool and object arrange, send backwards, that yellow square is now behind this circle here, right? And you can tell that's that way in the stacking order over here. I can select both of these and go up to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and what happens is the object on top crops the object in the back. If you do it opposite, and so I have this object in the front and this object in the back, Clipping Mask, Make, I have to select both objects first. You'll see what happens, that the square then crops off the circle. You can't have two different appearances. What happens is one thing takes on the appearance of the other. So one thing acts as a cropping tool or cropping agent, and the other thing is retains its appearance. So in the case of that ellipse, oops, the thing that's in the back, when I made a clipping mask, that's the only thing that maintains its appearance, is the thing that's inside here. Okay, so what does that mean for you? If I go back and I just go to this circle here, I can quickly make a clipping mask out of this circle. So say I wanted to create something that quickly that goes in the background there, I can select that object, go down here and say draw inside, and effectively it's going to do the same thing. So if I come up here, I grab my brush, let's see, I'm going to grab this brush here and I draw. You can see what happens, that all you get is what's inside, and that totally updates every time that you move it around. So say for instance I go, I want to move that thing over here, it updates along with it. However, you can see with it, it's now a group. It contains a clipping mask and a bunch of paths. The reason it's a group is I have a bunch of paths that are associated with that object. So it works a little differently than things have worked before. You can always select the object, go up to the object menu, and then release it. And what that does now is it makes everything, its own entity. Updatable and editable in different ways. This thing, when it has that little bounding box, so it's still saying draw behind or draw inside, or in this case we're going to say now, we want this thing to draw normal again because maybe that's not what we wanted, or something like that. So if you basically are trying to use a clipping mask and then say, well, I want a stroke around, I want the stroke to appear, maybe you'll want to choose some other possibilities. So if I go ahead and make a couple of new objects here, I'll go make an ellipse that is yellow, do the opposite, too bored. If you select both of these, you can then go up to your window and Pathfinder menu, which is right here. And with both of those selected, you can go through these different shape modes and Pathfinder modes. Some of them are going to be obvious, like this one. It just basically links those two things together. And if I look in my layers to see what happens, it's not a compound path or anything like that. It's just now one object is taken on, the one on top is taking on the qualities of the one on the bottom, and I have a merged shape, which is kind of helpful when you're trying to maybe build something from scratch. You can also select both of these, and you can see one crops off the other. Your results will vary depending on which object is on top, which is on the bottom. I'm not going to lie to you, I can never remember exactly what's going to happen, so I might say, well, maybe I need to go back and rearrange these, put that one in back, and then see what happens when I do both of these there. Okay, I got a different result, or something like that. So then you also have these different pathfinders down here. So select these, and sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. So I go into the group here and I see that no, it's just made this all one group. If you hover over it, you see that it divides, sometimes it subtracts. I think in this case it trims, so it removed any excess, and then now you have these two editable objects inside of here. Once again, I'll go over to my path or my layer and see what happened. In some cases that'll make it a compound path, sometimes it'll make it what's called a clipping mask. So let's go to that real quick. If I select both of these and I go down to compound path, make, you can see that I got something similar to one of my shape modes here. And I think that's what this one is here, compound shape, and it's reflected here. So once again, compound paths and clipping masks, one property will be assumed by the other depending on which one is on top and which one is on the bottom. Lastly, over here I have this, I've taken it's dinner time, and basically if I double click on the object, oops, it's because it's locked. It is. So if I double click on the object, I go into isolation mode. You'll notice sometimes that'll happen. You can just double click out of that. It's really helpful. Right now I just want to work on this one object here. If I look at it now, I'm in isolation mode. I open this up. I see it's dinner time is selected, I believe, and there's all the steak that's underneath here. So what I did is I took the image of steak here, I copied that over, and I placed it inside of this font. Okay, so basically I did the same thing to draw inside. So you can use and I'll do that now. You can use now. Finally, you can use fonts as shapes, and you don't have to convert them. So basically, what did I do here? I just gave it no fill, gave it a stroke, and maybe I'm going to free transform this, make it a little wider and fatter here, and I'll go back. Maybe I want to put that stake in there. So Alt Option, bring it over, and what I can do is I can select this, draw inside, and I can put it into the background of that object there. I'm going to delete this one, and now that stake is inside of there. Double click on it, go in, and I can edit around or move the stake around just by selecting the donut of the object. And now, hey, I want to make that stake a little bigger, kind of maybe make it a little flatter or something like that, whatever you want to do. And once again, if I select off into space, I move Burton around, it updates with it. So by selecting that, you can tell that it's going to be a group Burton stake, and you have an object that's updatable. Once again, if you don't want that to be like that, you can release it, and now you have two different objects. That's Compound Path and Clipping Masks.